This morning, I would like to tag the prophet Samuel's words to Saul. Obedience is better than sacrifice. Obedience is better than sacrifice. And I want to use that. I want to use that phrase as the subject for our message this morning, the best part of worship. The best part of worship. Church is an important part of being a Christian. And church is an expression of our faith that is demonstrated in worship. We come to church to worship God. However, the model that we have now, what we do now, has not always been the model of worship. From the very beginning of man's existence, sacrifice has been an essential part of worship. If we go to Genesis, we'll see Cain and Abel both offering up sacrifices to God. If we begin to look through the pages of the Old Testament, we'll see the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, all using sacrifice to worship God. When Moses led Israel out of Egypt and they established themselves as a people, God told them to build a tent. And in that tent was the presence of God. And that they worshiped God in that tent. And Israel carried that tent throughout the desert into the promised land. And after they entered into the promised land, that tent became a temple. And in the center of that temple was the presence of God, and they worshiped God with sacrifices. For the people of Israel, sacrifice was the center of their worship. Everything they did centered around sacrifice to God. To them, sacrifice was the best part of their worship. Now, keeping that in mind, when you read the text, and Samuel says to the king of Israel, obedience is better than sacrifice. It is a paradigm shift in the way Israel did worship. That very statement was an indication that there was something greater than sacrifice in worship. Because they had always thought that sacrifice was the best part of their worship. It was essential. It was at the center of their worship. So for the prophet to say to them, there is something better than sacrifice, was earth-shattering, was life-changing to the people of Israel. Now, you say, what does that have to do with me right now? What does that have to do with me? Well, let's see if I can clear the picture up a little bit by talking a little bit about this in context. So King Saul was instructed to kill King Agag, king of the Amalekites, and all the people and all of the animals. He said to utterly destroy them off the face of the earth. And when King Saul came across the Amalekites, he decided to spare the king, and he decided to keep the best that they had, the animals and their possessions, and destroy everything else. The intent for keeping those things was to use it in worship. Again, remember, the sacrificial system is important to Israel. So why is this important to us? What relevance does it have to us today? I want to say to you, and I want to suggest to you, that we have a type of sacrificial system in our churches today. But like Israel, it's packaged a little different. We have an order to the things that we offer to God. Let me paint a little clearer picture. We offer praise and worship. We offer songs and sermons. We offer our time, our talent, and our treasures. We bring them to God as a type of offering. We come to church Sunday after Sunday, month after month, year after year, bringing those things to church to use in the service of God. And in our minds, we believe that what we're giving to God is the best part of worship. We come to church to give him praise. We sing that a lot. We come to give him praise. We praise God. We lift up prayers. We lift up our hands. We do all of these things in the offering that we have for God. Let me go a little deeper. We come to church, and what we give to church is a type of offering that we present to God. And you say, well, what's wrong with that? I've been doing this my whole life. I feel like coming to church is what I'm supposed to do. I've been coming to church my whole life. I've been serving on boards and clubs my whole life. I've been giving my money to the church my whole life. I've been coming to choir practice and steward meetings and deaconess meetings and missionary meetings and all kinds of boards and clubs, and I've been spending all of my extra time and my hard-earned money here at the church, and you're telling me that that's not the best thing that I could be doing in church? See, we've been miseducated in worship. We've been miseducated because we feel like the things that we give is the best part of worship. Yeah. If we give a whole lot, we feel like we've done our part. Y'all not going to pray with me this morning, but it's okay. See, those of us who give a whole lot to the church, we give our time, and we give our talents, and we give our treasures. We say, that's enough. I've given the best that I have to give to God. But I want to say to you, that's not the best part of worship. Coming here and praising God is not the best part of worship. I'm going to mess you up today. Coming here and lift up your hands to God is not the best part of worship. It's important, but it's not the best part. It's not the best part of worship. Because worship has a component that's higher than praise. That's higher than prayers. That's higher than the money we give to God. There's a component of worship that that few of us enter into because of what it says. The prophet gives us an indication that there's a better part of worship. There's something that's better than what we give to God. Obedience. So simple, yet so profound. Samuel says obedience is better than sacrifice. And to someone whose life has been built around sacrificing something for God or to God, that changes everything about worship. To somebody been coming in this church year after year, giving all they got to God, and you tell me that there's something better than what I've been giving to God my whole life, I'm going to tell you, yes, there is. There's something better. And that better is obedience. At the center of everything we are as believers, obedience is there. Jesus tells us, if you love me, keep my commandments. He is tired of us coming in here, lifting our hands and won't do what we've been asked to do. Offering, let me rephrase that. Acceptable offering comes with condition. Acceptable. So you want your offering to be accepted by God. Look at Cain and Abel. One was rejected, one was accepted. You don't want to go the way of Cain. Cain's offering was rejected. Abel's offering was accepted. Acceptable offering comes with the condition of obedience. It does us no good to come into this service and lift our hands to God and be unwilling to do what he's asked us to do. Obedience is better than sacrifice. Everything you give to God means nothing if you won't do what he asks you to do. We struggle with obedience. It's easier for me to give God $5 of my money than it is for me to do what he's asked me to do. If he's asked me to forgive those who've hurt me, it's easier for me to spend my time working on boards and clubs and giving and doing in the church as opposed to obeying what God has asked me to do. For a lot of us, we are unwilling to obey, and I'm going to say it like this, is because God has not pulled out the proverbial switch on us. He has not chastised us. There is no direct consequence for us disobeying God that we can see. You know, y'all act like mama has never corrected you before. When you got out of line, you were corrected. Amen? And the correction reinforced you staying in line. What has happened is that we don't see the immediate correction, and we've caused ourselves to stray. I want to say to you, there's something better than your sacrifice. The best part of your worship is obeying God. Don't lift your hands in praise and worship if you're not willing to do what he asks you to do. Don't come to the altar and give your money to God if you're not willing to do what he asks you to do. Because you're missing out on the best part of worship. The best part of worship comes with obedience. It comes with obedience. Saul was rejected as king of Israel because he was disobedient to what God called him to do. God took from him his purpose. I'll get that in a minute. He pulled his anointing off of him. He took his hands off of Saul because he wouldn't do what God asked him to do. When we refuse to obey God, it will cloud your purpose. Rejection, God won't provide, God won't guide, God won't direct when we are disobedient to his will. I know this is tight, y'all, but look, there are some of us walking around right now asking, why is this happening to me? I come to church every Sunday. I give my tithes and offering. I serve on boards and clubs. I do what God asked me to do, and I don't know why this is happening to me. Why I don't see the blessings of God in my life. Why is my life still the way it is? Beloved, I want to say to you for a certainty that the reason you don't see God's blessings on your life is that you first must examine how obedient you are to the will of God. How obedient are you to God? How obedient are you to doing what God has asked us to do? There are some here that won't do what God has over and over told them to do. They won't walk in his will nor his way. And God has removed his hand from your life, and you don't see the blessings of God because we refuse to be obedient. And we come in here every Sunday, every month, every year expecting the blessings of God because we come here thinking that the best part of worship, that all I have to do is come into the service, come into the sanctuary, lift up hands, give a little money, do some service, and God will bless me. And I'm telling you, it don't work like that. It don't work like that. It don't work like that. Obedience to God's will is the best part of worship. It is in worship that when you submit yourself to God, God will begin to speak to you correctively. Okay, let me get to where you at. When you're in church, in a part of worship, and you begin to worship God, there are some components to your life that God will begin to address. While you're busy lifting your hands, you know, there's somebody you need to forgive. There's somebody you need to love on a little more. There's some people you need to add some grace to. You know this, I've been telling you to do this, I need you to do this now. And what has happened is we're so busy holding up our hands and we're too busy singing praises that we have not heard the voice of God. And what God is trying to do is that in the midst of you giving me praise, honor, and glory, there's some corrective action that needs to take place in our lives. See, we want to come in here and praise him because that's easy. But the difficult part is that once you've got instruction, do what God asks you to do. So he says, I want you to be on this committee. I want you to do this. Why do you want me to be on that committee? I don't like the people on the committee. Well, that's why I want you to be on it. Why? Because there's an opportunity for you to grow when you are placed in a situation where you have to love on, be kind to people that are not kind to you. See, help me, somebody. I'm gonna preach this one myself. See, everything is not designed to make you happy, but everything is designed to make you grow. And what God is trying to do is to make us grow spiritually and more mature. And in the worship, in that worship component, God begins to deal with us about the issues of life. And a lot of times we turn that off because we're too busy lifting our hands and praising and singing. And we say, well, I can give money. I can be on the club that I want to be on. I can sing in the choir. I like to sing. What God is trying to do is get you to a place where you will obey him in all situations. Not those that are comfortable, but those that are uncomfortable. Let's go to the text. I think it's 24. Pull up 24 for me. I'll be out of your way quickly. 24, verse 24. Verse 24. Saul says, I've sinned, for I've transgressed the commandment of the Lord and your words, because I feared the people and obeyed their voice. Because I feared the people and I obeyed their voice. I feared them more than I feared you. I obeyed them more than I obeyed you. I was more concerned about what they thought than what you thought. I was more interested in being somebody special in their eyes than being somebody special in your eyes. I was more interested in whether they liked or loved my post than I was of doing what you've asked me to do. I was more concerned about whether they were going to like me when we got out of church, whether they were going to friend me on their page. I was afraid that I wouldn't be to them what I wanted to be. I was their king. I didn't want to let them down. I didn't want them to see me in another light. So I just went along to get along. You know what I'm saying? That sometimes you just go along to get along because it's easier. The fear of rejection. The fear of being disliked. The fear of not being understood. He didn't fear them like they were going to destroy him. He feared them like they weren't going to like me as much if I didn't go along with them. They wanted to keep the stuff. And I just said, it's okay. A lot of times disobedience comes because we want to be popular. We want people to like us. Because when they like us, we feel better about ourselves. So oftentimes we'll step out of the will of God because we want to be liked. We are afraid of people not liking us. So we heed to their voices instead of heeding to God's voices. And you say, well, I don't do that. Okay. I wouldn't go down there to that church. I wouldn't serve on that board. I wouldn't serve on that committee. I wouldn't sing in that choir. I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't do that. Because, you know, them people down there is funny. Them people down there are strange. Them people down there are mean. I wouldn't do that. You're right. I shouldn't do that. They're going to hurt your feelings down there. They're going to mess your kids up down there. They're going to mess your mom and your daddy up down there. I wouldn't go down there and fool with them. And what happens is you get talked out of what God has told you to do because you're so afraid that people are not going to like you for doing what God has called you to do. I'm going to tell you for certain that in order to worship God, you can't care. You cannot care what people say about you. This is not a popularity contest. This is not about you liking me. This is about the will of God for my life. So when I come into this place, thank you. When I come into this place and I begin to worship God, and we're in tune to what he's saying, he begins to deal with us. And I said this over again. He's dealing with some of us now. And what's happening is that we have to decide whether to do it or not do it. And you can say, well, how do I know it's God's voice? Well, he's oftentimes going to tell you to do something you ain't going to want to do. And it's always going to line up with his word. It's going to line up with his word. And what happens is that we get upset because we try to justify our own actions. So we want to look, and there's some of us that stop coming to church because we really don't want to hear God's voice. We really don't want to hear God's word. We really don't want to hear. We are quite content doing our own thing. We are quite content coming in here, look, give a little money, sing a little song, hear a little word, and go back to doing our own thing. We are very content to doing that. Week after week, and look, we are quite content. As long as you don't mess with my stuff, I'm not going to mess with yours. We are happy just where we are. But if you want to walk in the fullness of God, if you want to walk in all that God has for you, the best part of worship is not lifting your hands, but the willingness to submit to his will for your life. The component of lifting your hands is saying, I surrender. Watch. Let's make this a little bit contemporary. When the police say freeze, what do? You put your hands up because what? You saying I surrender, right? God is trying to arrest some of you in your spirit. And you're not lifting your hands in submission. Because you feel like I don't want to because I want people to like me. And I want people, I'm conscious about people liking who I am. I have to deal with people daily. And I want people to like me. And I want people to respect me. And I want people to look up to me. I want to be somebody important in someone's eyes. God will put you in places where you are not popular. He will. So I don't talk. God will put you in places where you're not comfortable, where people will not always like you. And it's designed so you can grow. So Saul said, I feared the people more than I feared you. I was disobedient. And I couldn't do it because I was concerned about the people. The better part of worship comes when we are obedient to God and not afraid of the people. There's one more that I want to share with you before I take my seat. We're out of here. Did you put 24 up for me, guys? Go back to 23. For rebellion is as a sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you from being king. I got so excited about the first one, I didn't tell you. I got so excited about the second one, I didn't tell you the first one. Disobedience leads to false worship. Look at that. Rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity or idolatry. Idolatry is false worship. When we are stuck in disobedience, we will gravitate toward things that will make us feel good, and oftentimes those things are against the will of God. We will begin to lift up things that will pull us out of the will of God. Instead of doing what God would have us to do, we would rather live in disobedience and gravitate toward things that would support our disobedience. Okay. Witchcraft is the sin of wanting to control others. And iniquity and idolatry, that's sin and false worship. I will gravitate toward people and situations that I can control. Okay. Let me hit you where you at. So instead of doing and what God asked me to do, Instead of moving in his will, I'm going to move to a place where I can be in control. Not just of myself, but of others. Because in this day of all about me, I want to make sure I surround myself with people that will continue to speak into me. I want to control those people. I want to control them. I want them to say nice things about me. I want them to do nice things for me. I gravitate toward people that I can control and manipulate instead of doing what God asked me to do. It's a form of rebellion. It's a form of I want it my way. It's like Burger King. We want to have it our way. Beloved, you can't have it your way and worship God. I'm going to say it that you can't have it your way and worship God. You can't do your own thing and worship God and receive the benefit. This is not about us. This is not about you. This is not about your popularity. This is not about your sickness. This is not about your pain. This is not about your problem. This is not about your trials. This is not about your tribulations. Let me get to where you at. Because a lot of us have it twisted that we come to church to pour everything out on God. We want to pour all our problems out on God, all our pain, all our sickness, all our trials, all our tribulations, all our trouble. We want to do all of that on God, and we don't want to do anything that he wants us to do. So we come here and we dump all of our problems, all of our pain, everything that we're going through from the last week, from the last month, all our bad relationships, all our bad jobs, everything that we're going through. We come here and we lay it all on the altar. We want to cast all of our cares on God. We want to give it to God because our hope is that if we give it to him, he's going to do something about it. So we come here Sunday after Sunday after Sunday, dumping all our mess on God, and yet we refuse to do what he's asked us to do. We refuse to go where he's asked us to go, say what he's asked us to say. And you want to come here and say, God bless me, God touch me, God use me. And what I want to say to some of us this morning, God is not going to move until we start to obey. When you come to the altar and you lay yourself at God's feet, it is an altar of submission that God, I'll do it. God, I'll go. God, I'll say. And when you submit to God, then God begins to come into your life. And guess what? When he comes into your life, what begins to happen? God begins to walk with you. And in that relationship, God begins to deal with the problems and the pain and the sickness and the trial and the trouble and the tribulation. No, it ain't all going to go away. But baby, he's going to walk with you while you're going through what you're going through. And God will be there and talk with you and walk with you and make sure that what you're going through, God is there. See, you can't have worship without obedience. You can't have worship without obedience. To lift our hands to God is to say, God, I surrender. I surrender. I surrender my will. I surrender my way. God, it's not about me. That when I come to this place, it is not about me. It is about me. It is about you and your will. I want you to your feet. I want you to your feet. I'm done.